Good morning. Unfortunately, I was not, in fact, motivated yesterday to get the motivation started. But today is a new day, so new motivation, right? So the first thing I need to talk about is basically we're going to break up this topic into 5 chunks today. We're going to talk about what is motivation. Then we're going to talk about 3 different categories of motivational theories separately: the need motive values of motivation, the cognitive models, and then the self-regulatory models. And then finally, we're going to talk about, okay, we've got these wonderful models of motivation. How can we apply it? How we can actually change performance in our factory. Okay, so motivation. In fact, this topic 9 here, we've now ended the industrial portion of the course, and we've moved into the organizational course. Okay, so the organizational portion is systematic study of dispositional and situational factors that influence the behaviors and experiences at work. I'm not 100% convinced that this wouldn't fall into the industrial side, but I just go with people that hopefully know more than I do. Okay. To me, it feels as though motivation is in fact something which is sort of owned by the employees, or inside of them. But anyway, what kind of things might be in this stuff? Motivation, yep. Job attitudes, that's topic 10. Worker well-being, groups, leadership, organizational theory. Clearly, those are basically the topic titles for the rest of the class. So the Hawthorne studies had showed us that psychological environment is as important, if not more, than the physical environment. So clearly, this is what we're going to be talking on: the psychological environment. So motivation. Let's first talk motivation a little bit in just a psychological concept. Motive, Latin for to move, right? And so we find simply it's a force that drives people to behave in certain ways. We could talk, some real theoretical. I mean, there's been theories of motivation going back to Aristotle. Aristotle had this conception of entelechy. Entelechy was sort of like a motivation provided by the universe. And it's fascinating because people have not, it's like the universe wants certain outcomes, all right? It's kind of like there's a disturbance in the force, Luke. Of course, I didn't do a good job of Obi-Wan Kenobi there, but this idea that the universe has some kind of a larger goal. It feels weird that we can talk about an active universe, but this active universe idea has been at the core of all thoughts about motivation since Aristotle. Okay. Well, motivation on an individual level. I mean, we could talk motivation on a group level, but here we're going to talk motivation on an individual level, or more specifically, the motivation of an individual worker. Okay. Motivation is something that creates. It's a force that results in effort. It energizes us. It directs us. Not just energizes us, get up and do, but get up and do something specific. Okay, and it not only gives us the energy to get up and do and directs us towards where we should go, but it also maintains that behavior. Okay, maintains the effort over a period of time. So it gets us moving, it pushes us where we're going to go, and it keeps us running. Now, you can't measure motivation directly. Okay, it's a hypothetical construct. We've seen this before. Recall I had mentioned earlier that we talked about training, right? Training or learning, right? Remember, from other sides of psych. And so what we find is that training is intended to improve work performance, but motivation falls in the middle. If somebody has been trained and somebody has been learned, or heck, not even training, if somebody has the skills and ability for high job performance, but is not motivated to do so, they will not do so. And so motivation is so intimately tied to learning, because remember, the only way you can infer learning or skills, what is this worker's skills? What is their abilities? The only way I can measure skills, abilities, or whether or not something has been learned is through behavioral measures or job performance. But if motivation is not present, performance will not happen, but that does not mean either skills, abilities, or learning has not occurred. It just means I don't give a shit. Okay. So a more specific kind of motivation is achievement motivation. Achievement motivation is motivation or desire or a push to master something, to have a significant accomplishment. We find mastery of people ideas, attaining a high standard. And so achievement motivation is something that permeates all things. And so a worker that has high achievement motivation will not just want to have high job performance, but will want their products to be the best in the factory or something of this nature. And so we find that, being smart is one thing, but achievement motivation is quite another. All right, quite a different idea. So related to this notion of achievement motivation is this idea need for achievement, put together by McClellan and Atkinson originally. But need for achievement is a social motive, as opposed to biological motives like hunger and thirst and temperature regulation. So a social motive, and it's kind of like a personality trait. You would find need for achievement intimately connected to the big five personality traits. But it's sort of like if people are encouraged to be independent and try new activities, if they're given praise when they master it. And so it's this need for achievement is an incredibly important idea, which of course leads to this notion of achievement motivation. And as I say, this need for achievement is at the core of all success, not just job success, but clearly people that are high in need to achieve perform better in school, right? They seek out more challenges, they try new things, they set higher goals. If you're talking about coming back to the IO psychology, clearly these are the workers. Workers that are high in need for achievement are the ones that get promoted up the ladder. I mean, there's no doubt. But those that are high in need for achievement are willing to delay gratification and say, I need to sacrifice today for some larger achievement or goal. Okay? In a really cool study, they measured people's need for achievement, right? And they got paper and pencil tests to do this. It's a simple enough thing to do. And so they give them a ring toss game. People that are high in need for achievement will create a task which is challenging. They will stand at a moderate distance, and it's such that the success in the game is dependent upon their skills. But people that are low in need for achievement will either stand very, very close so that it's just like bing, 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 get them all right, or stand very far so that they can say, hey, it's not my fault that I didn't hit any of the targets because, I'm too far back. So only those in need for achievement will truly set up the challenge that would be necessary to test their skills. On the opposite extremes, sort of, kind of, not really, but sort of, is learned helplessness. In a classic study, this is Martin Seligman's, one of his biggest contributions, as cruel as it might be. What happens is they put this dog in this little box. You see this box with two sides, and the floor has the ability to deliver an electric shock, and there's a little wall there, okay? So you see what you got there. You put a dog in here, and you see what happens is the dog is standing on one side, and then at random intervals, that little light, the red light there, turns on. 15 seconds after that light turns on, the floor on which the dog is standing will get electrified. Oh, shit. Okay? And so inevitably the dog will jump over that little barricade to avoid, to stop being shocked. Well, pretty soon this dog learns, aha, when the red light comes on, I got 15 seconds and jump over the barricade. And if the dog jumps over that little barricade within that 50 seconds, no shocks. Okay? And so after a while, this dog is an expert, and the light turns on, and the dog doesn't even seem to notice the light, and maybe 10, 12 seconds later, it steps over, okay? No problem, it never gets shocked. Now, take a second group, and this is where it gets really cruel. And you do the same thing, except that dog right there, you do the same thing at random intervals, the red light comes on, and 15 seconds after the red light comes on, shock. But in the second group here, they are tied down, they're leashed, they're harnessed, they cannot jump over. And so the light comes on, 15 seconds later, bzz, the light comes on, 15 seconds later, bzz, etc. Yeah? Now, after they've experienced this for a while, then take off the harness. And now they're just like the first group. If you just jump over that little barricade at any point within 15 seconds, you can, avoid shock. Well, what happens in this second group that had first experienced this harnessing is when the red light comes on, their tails droop, their ears droop, they just lay down and just like, oh shit, and they just give up. And they never, not only never learn to solve this thing, they never even attempt to solve this thing. Okay? And so this is what learned helplessness is. If you get exposed to situations where you just don't have control over the outcomes in your life, you're going to get this generalized feeling of helplessness. It's not going to be this dog that experience the uncontrolled shock. If you put them into a different situation, it would never try to learn either. Okay, that's kind of the point. It would learn helplessness across all situations. And so workers that are exposed, workers that do not have control over their environment will get this as well. And it could be as simple as some companies are just ruthless sons of bitches, and they're like, no personal items on your desk. Are you kidding me? That is the ultimate lack of control. I mean, human beings need their own personal space. They need their own defensible territory. And you're going to say no personal items? You are taking away from their ability to control. And so, though these companies may think they're doing a good thing by limiting something like personal items, they're ultimately shooting themselves in the foot by creating employees that are helplessness. And so what happens is these employees, I mean, it can affect your physical health. I'm not teaching about health psychology today, but yeah, these learned helplessness is an extreme form of stress, which leads to high cortisol levels, which leads to ulcers, which leads to all kinds of cognitive impairments. So clearly, this is a problem in many work environments. We can break motivation down into intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic motivation is desire to perform for its own sake. Intrinsic motivation is kind of what achievement motivation is. Okay, that is to say, achievement motivation is a form of intrinsic motivation. And so, intrinsically motivated people, that they want to get an A because they want to, they just no. An intrinsically motivated person wants to learn the material just because they want to learn the material, not because they're going to get an A. Somebody that is extrinsically motivated will say, the only reason I'm learning this material is I need an A. And so, taking a look at this little image here under my head, look, mom says to a kid, I'll give you $5 for every A. And the kid goes, as long as she keeps paying, I'll keep studying. Now that's extrinsic motivation, although I think that we need to change this slide now to say $50, right? This is $5 ain't gonna cut it anymore. But what's the problem with the extrinsic motivation is, as soon as mom says, all right, it's on you now, Junior. Junior goes off to college, and Junior's still saying, I need $50 for my A, Mom. And if Mom keeps paying, then Junior goes off to a work environment. At some point, extrinsic motivation doesn't cut it anymore. But if you intrinsically motivated, your grades were great, let's celebrate by going out to dinner. It's not a controlling reward, it's an informative reward. Okay? And this is a critically important job. Heck, here I am. As a parent, it's an incredibly important job to create intrinsic motivation in our children, because intrinsic motivation is, as I say, how we get achievement motivation, which is, as we say, at the root of oh so many successful behaviors in this world. So, how can managers motivate people? Well, number one, cultivate intrinsic motivation. And so what you do is you need to give tasks to your workers that are challenging, that trigger their curiosity, okay? Not boring, mundane things. Avoid reducing self-determination by using too many extrinsic rewards. You can motivate people by attending to their motives. And we'll talk about this in some things later, but different people are motivated by different stuff. And again, coming back to the work environment, some are motivated by raises, some are motivated by employee recognition, some are motivated by, I want to achieve, the parking spot that employee of the month gets, okay? Some are motivated by flexible time, flexible scheduling at the workforce. So you need to look at your workers and find what motivates them. Because if you're trying to provide the wrong reinforcement system, you will not create what you want to create. Okay? And then and give progress reports. Okay, clear objectives of progress reports. Wonderful. All right, so we'll come back hopefully in a little while after I take my kid to school. We'll come back and we'll talk about different theories of motivation.